The double love fraud. I repeatedly tell individuals to stay away from online dating. If you want a thorough and detailed explanation as to why that is, with regard to the impact upon you in terms of dashed hopes and, of course, the misery of becoming ensnared by our kind, then listen to the video why you should not use online dating. Of course, with many people in lockdown around the world, the ability to go and date people has been vastly reduced and has increased a reliance upon online dating. Indeed, the Online Dating Association explained that more than 2.3 million people across the United Kingdom used dating apps during the initial coronavirus lockdown. All of those individuals, of course, will not have been ensnared by our kind, but take it from me that the online environment, particularly online dating, is a hunting ground for our kind. Not only are you at an increased risk of being ensnared by our kind, because it is such an easy environment within which we can operate, for reasons I explain in the video why you shouldn't use online dating, but it also results in the risk that you will have failed expectations even if you don't get caught by one of our kind. The fact that you're looking for romance that doesn't originate, that your hopes are dashed, that you are disappointed, that the person that you thought was wonderful and interesting and looked a particular way turns out not to be the case, of course, is a problem in itself. But much more dangerous is the increased risk that you have of being ensnared by one of our kind. We cruise through cyberspace, through the dating apps, the online forums, and especially the online dating arenas, looking for victims, because it's so easy to become something else, which is precisely the existence of the narcissist. Accordingly, we commit love fraud through the familiar tale of seduction. We draw people in, all seems well, and then as the relationship intensifies, devaluation comes knocking as it always does, and thereafter there is the roller coaster of devaluation, respite period, or disengagement occurs. Or sometimes you escape, having realized that the individual that you thought was completely besotted and in love with you was not only badly treating you in terms of silent treatments, ghosting you, making unpleasant remarks about you, but was also seeing other people. Because the advantage of the online dating arena is its ease of use, enables us to have several irons in the fire. So even at the outset, the narcissist will have more than one intimate partner secondary source that is being groomed and cultivated through the online dating arena. Then when you become, or if you become, the intimate partner primary source, of course the narcissist will not cheat during the golden period. But then devaluation occurs, and the narcissist will of course resurrect those shelved intimate partner secondary sources as part of your devaluation and seek out new ones using the modus operandi of the very easy-to-use online dating environment. You end up with the first problem of the love fraud, that your romantic and love hopes have been completely dashed and that you've been badly treated as you have become ensnared by our kind. However, the online dating environment just does not result in the commission of love fraud. It results in monetary fraud as well through the auspices of romance. A report in the BBC today detailed that romance fraud, the concept of scamming someone out of money by pretending to want a relationship, has been on the rise during lockdown. According to UK Finance, there was a 20% increase in bank transfer fraud linked to romance scams in 2020 compared to 2019. £68 million was lost to such scams in 2020, which was an increase on the previous year. Interestingly, in both 2019 and 2020, the report explains that the amount of money lost to romance fraud outstripped that stolen by online shopping fraud, according to Action Fraud, which is the main reporting body in the United Kingdom. Although I don't have the information to hand, I suspect that this behaviour is replicated in other countries around the world. Of course, COVID-19 has added to the problem. Pauline Smith, the head of Action Fraud, stated, "The national lockdowns and other restrictions on social lives implemented because of the coronavirus outbreak have meant more people have been seeking companionship online, and this has undoubtedly affected the number of reports that we have seen." The difficulty is, of course, at home, unable to go and see people in the usual way, turning to cyberspace as a means of finding companionship, some fun, love and romance, has seen as an easy and sensible option, except it isn't. Not only, as I have explained, are you at increased risk of having the commission of a love fraud against you by a narcissist, you also run the risk, as this reporter explains, of being manipulated out of your money. The people that do this are invariably our kind, driven by a sense of entitlement, a lack of emotional empathy, the lack of boundary recognition, and a lack of accountability. The individual, of course, isn't interested in a romantic relationship. They just utilize the romantic relationship for the purposes of ensnaring the victim to drain them of cash. The fraudsters will use emotive language, often, for instance, pity plays, saying that money is needed for medical bills, or explaining that they need assistance to get home. There are considerable difficulties that people face when engaging with these individuals because they don't know who they are actually dealing with, and many of the scammers will be narcissists, but not all. Some will be normal people, or narcissistic individuals who aren't narcissists. Why might they be engaged in this behaviour? Well, quite simply, a narcissistic individual has low levels of emotional empathy, and a normal person can have significant levels of emotional empathy for a narrow radius of people around them, their friends and their family, for instance, their children, their parents. But when it comes to a stranger on the other side of the world, they have no emotional empathy for them. And also, it may well be that their need, for instance, their need for money, whether to get beyond a subsistence lifestyle or to fund an excessively lavish lifestyle, combines to remove and drive down any emotional empathy that might exist for this person. The person who is on the other end of the computer, on the other end of a telephone line, isn't actually known. They are in effect an object to that individual. And therefore it is easy for the normal individual to scam such a person because there is no emotional empathy towards that individual for how they are made to feel, both in terms of believing they were getting a relationship and they're not, and also being taken for a ride in terms of stealing money from them. And therefore, the double love fraud that can occur is not just the preserve of narcissists, but also will be commissioned by normal people too. However, for the most part, the activity will be undertaken by narcissists because of the absence of emotional empathy, the huge sense of entitlement, and the lack of accountability. The reporter explained that according to data from Lloyds Bank, a bank in the United Kingdom, that people aged 55 to 64 are particularly at risk. There's a lady who was in her 50s and a widow. She became prey to her scammer, who called himself Tim, after meeting him on a dating website. They used the chat facility beforehand, and then they switched to WhatsApp. The narcissist will invariably use the pond or ocean to go fishing for victims through the dating app, able to use false pictures, able to concoct some kind of profile, and then hide behind the chat messages. It is easy enough to rope in somebody who is lonely, unaware of narcissism, and aware of the danger that they are finding themselves in. Thereafter, as a part of the continued assertion of control and the pursuit of the residual benefit of money, the narcissist scammer will move the individual to, for instance, WhatsApp or texting through telephone in order to make the interaction seem more intimate, more intense. The bombardment of messages will occur, the flattery, the praise, the future faking, I can't wait to meet you. It's such a shame that we can't at the moment because of the pandemic. And then the narcissist will come forth with the requests for money. In the instance of this lady, after a few weeks, Tim told her that he was travelling to Romania to work on a transport project and asked her to send money. He asked for small amounts and then larger ones, and eventually defrauded her to the tune of £320,000, a significant sum of money with regard to anybody's estimation. Of course, many people reading such stories think, what an absolute clown, fancy giving away that money to somebody that you didn't know. However, those of you who have been ensnared by our kind will recognize that in the interaction that you, in a sense, do lose your senses in a way. This is occasioned by your addiction to the narcissist causing your emotional thinking to rise so you don't spot the red flags and think it's a little bit strange that this person's asking me for money. Your empathic traits are corrupted so that you feel compassion for the individual because they want help. And when it's a small sum, you think, okay, yes, I'll help out. There's also the fact of an individual who perhaps is lonely, is looking for companionship, perhaps hasn't been in a relationship for some time, doesn't want to lose this individual who seemingly is so interesting and exciting and fun and friendly, and therefore wants to do it. And of course, their compassionate nature, their generosity, their honesty and decency is taken advantage of by our kind. In some instances, it might not just be a case of obtaining money, but instead garnering personal information from the victim, which can then later be utilized for the purposes of committing identity fraud. The online environment is one that you should stay away from when it comes to looking for love. Not only will you run the significant risk of being ensnared by a romantic narcissist, as I explained in Why You Should Not Use Online Dating, you suffer the double whammy in certain instances where the individual cultivates a pretend relationship with you for the purposes of defrauding you out of money. And given the statistics that I described earlier in this video, it really is big business for those that are carrying it out. The double love fraud is a risk, and our kind are prevalent amongst them, driven by the need to assert control, the receipt of fuel by the responses, the lack of remorse, the lack of emotional empathy, a sense of entitlement to behave in this manner, not recognizing the boundaries, to acquire the assets of another person, which is a residual benefit, having no accountability for it, obtaining the money until such time as the victim begins to get suspicious and cuts off the provision of the money, and then disappearing, disengaging from the individual, and then going to seek out another victim instead. Those that read these stories are often incredulous, thinking how could somebody be so stupid? But the combination of the rise in emotional thinking causing an individual to fail to see what is actually happening before them, added to the issue of the convincing nature of the narcissist with the love bombing, the flattery, the pity plays, the triangulation, means it's all too easy for people to get caught out. But time and time again, they don't realize that the majority of these scammers are narcissists. Yes, there are normal people involved also, but many are narcissists, and that is something that people fail to recognize and fail to understand the red flags of that narcissism, which if they knew about in the beginning, they'd be far less likely to get caught out. The simple point remains this: Stay away from online dating. You'll avoid having your heart broken and avoid the risk of having your bank account emptied. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.